Once upon a time, there was a man named Kunle Banjo, one of the most flamboyant businessmen in Lagos. He lived like the city itself, fast, noisy, and unapologetic. In Victoria Island, where skyscrapers touched the sky and car horns never seemed to rest, Kunle's presence was impossible to ignore. He rolled through the streets in convoys of black SUVs, the police sirens clearing his way. He was the type of man who believed money could buy not just comfort, but respect, loyalty, even love. But behind the luxury of his Lekki mansion, Kunle's life was darker than the tinted windows of his Range Rover. For 7 long years, his wife, Efeoma, had stood by his side. She had been there when his clothing line collapsed, when his political bid failed, when the banks nearly swallowed his first company. She cooked his meals, prayed for him, and loved him with the quiet steadiness of a woman who believed that true wealth wasn't in cars or parties, but in the family they hoped to build together. Yet every month ended in the same bitter silence. No children, no heir, no laughter of little feet running through their vast empty hallways. Kunle, consumed by pride, could not bear the whispers. His mother called him daily, "Kunle, when will you give me grandchildren?" His friends laughed behind his back, muttering that all his wealth meant nothing without a son to carry his name. The shame twisted him into a cruel man, and instead of seeking answers, he turned his anger on Efeoma. One evening, after yet another round of mocking phone calls from his political allies, he exploded. In the middle of their marble-tiled living room, his voice echoed like thunder. "Efeoma, 7 years and still no child. What use is a wife who cannot give her husband an heir?" Efeoma's hands trembled as she tried to explain. "Kunle, we have tried. It may not even be me. Let's go for tests together." But Kunle cut her off, his words sharp like broken glass. "Don't insult me. It is you. It has always been you. You are a curse in my life. Tomorrow you will pack your things and leave my house." The woman who had given him her youth, her loyalty, her prayers, thrown out like yesterday's newspaper. That night, as Lagos blared with music from Owambi parties, Efeoma walked alone under the streetlights of Ikoyi, carrying nothing but a small bag in her broken heart. She whispered through tears, "I may be leaving with nothing, but my God will fight for me." And in that vow lay the seed of a story Kunle would never forget. Because years later, at the peak of his pride, when he thought he had erased her from his life, Efeoma would return. Not in shame, not in sorrow, but in glory, with a truth that would silence an entire wedding hall in Lagos. The question is, what happens when a man tries to disgrace the woman he once called barren, only for her to arrive carrying the one thing he thought she could never give him? Mourning in Lagos has its own rhythm, a rhythm of chaos and ambition. The bleating of danfos at Ojuelegba, the sweet call of hawkers shouting, "A kiki bread!" Gala, cold pure water, the hum of generators filling the air like background music. In the heart of Victoria Island, however, the morning sounded different. There the streets buzzed with polished cars, tinted glasses, and well-dressed men in Italian suits sipping coffee at luxury cafes before heading into high-rise offices. This was the world Kunle Banjo thrived in. Kunle was in his early 40s, a man who lived life like he was Lagos itself, loud, proud, and always in motion. He ran a successful logistics company that handled contracts for oil firms, and with every deal he signed, his ego swelled larger than the billboards on 3rd Mainland Bridge. He was the kind of man who spoke with his chest out, his laughter filling a room even when no one else was laughing. And Lagos loved him for it. Or at least pretended to. He was always surrounded by politicians, musicians, and socialites. His Friday nights were spent at exclusive lounges in Lekki Phase 1, where bottles of champagne flowed like water and waiters rushed to serve him before anyone else. If Instagram had a king of Lagos lifestyle, Kunle would have worn the crown proudly, but in his mansion, hidden behind tall gates and armed security, the reality was different. His wife, Efeoma, lived like a ghost in her own home. She was soft-spoken, the type of woman who carried herself with grace even when life slapped her. Her beauty was simple but striking, smooth skin the color of roasted groundnut, bright, thoughtful eyes, and a smile that could calm storms. She had met Kunle back in their university days in Osaka, when he was still a dreamer struggling to afford textbooks. She had loved him then, not for his money, not for his flashy promises, but for his drive and charisma. She believed in him when no one else did. She even borrowed money from her family once to help him start his first small transport business. And yet, after years of loyalty, she was now the object of his bitterness. Why? Because she had not given him a child. Every month she prayed, fasted, and begged God. Every doctor's visit ended in disappointment. Every church vigil ended in tears. And every time, Kunle's patience thinned further. One Saturday evening, the storm finally broke. The mansion was glowing with lights, the smell of pepper soup wafting from the kitchen. Efeoma had dressed in a simple wrapper, waiting for Kunle to come home from his latest political meeting. She wanted to tell him about a new specialist doctor she had read about in Acadia. But when he walked in, his face was thunder. 7 years, Efeoma, he shouted, throwing his car keys on the glass table so hard the maid flinched. 7 years of waiting, and you still can't give me a child. Do you want me to die without an heir? Efeoma rose slowly from the sofa, her voice trembling. Kunle, I have tried. We have tried. Please, let's see another doctor. He laughed bitterly, cutting her off. Doctor? You think I'm the one with the problem? My friends laugh at me every day. My mother calls me Baron's husband. Do you know how that feels? Her eyes filled with tears. Kunle, I am your wife. We said for better or for worse, but he snapped. His words came like whips. What is a woman who cannot bear children? You eat my food, wear my clothes, live in my house, yet you cannot give me one son to carry my name. Efeoma, you are a curse in my life. The maids lowered their heads in the corridor, afraid to breathe. The weight of his words cut deeper than any knife. Efeoma fell to her knees, clutching his trousers. Please, Kunle, don't do this to me. God can still answer us. Give us more time. But he yanked his leg away as if her touch disgusted him. Enough. I will not waste my life with you any longer. By tomorrow, you will leave this house. Her chest tightened, her voice breaking. After all we've been through? After I stood by you when you had nothing? Kunle, have you forgotten? His eyes were cold, his heart sealed with pride. Love cannot produce children. By morning, Efeoma, you'll be gone. And that was final. That night, Efeoma packed her small suitcase. Every dress she folded carried a memory, birthdays, dinners, church services. But those memories now felt like ashes. She paused at the doorway, looking back at the mansion where she had poured 7 years of her life. Her voice cracked in a whisper. You will regret this. One day, you will see the truth. Kunle didn't flinch. He poured himself a glass of wine and scrolled to his phone like she was already invisible. With trembling hands, Efeoma dragged her suitcase out the front gate. The night air hit her face, carrying the smell of suya from the street corner and the faint roar of traffic from Eco Bridge. She walked under the streetlights, her slippers dragging against the asphalt. Legos moved around her, Okadas speeding past, hawkers shouting prices, security men dozing at gates, but no one saw her pain. She was just another woman walking into the night. But in her heart, a seed of quiet strength was planted, because Lagos has a way of crushing you and then forcing you to rise again. And Efeoma's story was only just beginning. The first nights after Efeoma left Kunle's mansion were the hardest. She stayed at her old university friend Chioma's one-bedroom flat in Surulere, squeezed between a sewing machine, a television that only worked after a slap on the side, and stacks of fabric waiting for customers. Chioma had been her roommate back in school, and though life had pulled them in different directions, her door was always open. When she saw Efeoma standing at her door that night, suitcase in hand, face streaked with tears, Chioma dropped everything and embraced her tightly. Don't cry, Efe. This house may be small, but it is your home now. For days, Efeoma barely spoke. She would sit by the window, staring out at the bustling Surulere street, children playing football barefoot, traders shouting, generators humming. Lagos was alive, but inside her, everything felt dead. Until one morning, Chioma came with a firm voice. Ife, tell me the truth. Has Kunle ever done a fertility test? Efeoma blinked. No. He said he didn't need it. He swore it was me. Chioma hissed, shaking her head. So all these years, you just believed him? Tomorrow, we're going to a proper hospital. Enough is enough. Efeoma hesitated, but deep down something told her it was time. The next day, they went to Lagos University Teaching Hospital, LUTH. The smell of disinfectant clung to the air. The sound of nurses' shoes echoed across the corridor. When they finally met the doctor, Efeoma's hands were trembling. After tests, scans, and hours of waiting, the doctor sat her down. He adjusted his glasses and said gently, "Madam, your reproductive health is perfectly fine. You are not barren. You can have children." The words hit her like a thunderclap. For a long moment, Efeoma just stared. Then tears spilled down her face, not of sorrow, but of release. "You mean all this time?" The doctor nodded. "If there were no pregnancies, I would advise your husband to check himself. From what I see here, you are healthy." Chioma jumped from her seat, clapping her hands. "I knew it. That man lied to you all these years. He broke you just to hide his shame." Efeoma's heart pounded. I was never the problem. That night, she sat awake, staring at the ceiling of Chioma's flat. She whispered to herself, "God, you saw my tears. You heard my cries. I wasn't the barren one." It was a turning point. From then on, Efeoma began to live differently. She still carried pain, but it was now laced with quiet strength. Chioma ran a small tailoring business from her flat, and Efeoma began helping her with customers. But soon she found her own calling. "I've always loved cooking," she told Chioma one evening, stirring a pot of egusi soup. "Maybe I can start a small food stand." Chioma's eyes lit up. "Yes. Lagos people love good food. Let's do it." With a borrowed table and some second-hand pots, Efeoma set up a food stall at the corner of Ojulekba Road. At first, passers-by ignored her, but the moment someone tasted her smoky jollof rice, word began to spread. By the second week, office workers were lining up for her amla with yudu, pepper soup, and fried plantain. Customers joked that she had a magic hand. Even bus conductors shouted, "Madam Jollof!" For the first time in years, Efeoma began to smile again. She was no longer known as the woman Kunle divorced. She was known as the woman whose food could make a tired Lagos worker forget the stress of third mainland traffic. One busy afternoon, as the sun blazed and sweat rolled down her forehead, a tall man in a neatly pressed white shirt approached her stall. He had kind eyes, the type that seemed to carry calm wherever they looked. "Good afternoon, madam," he said warmly. "Your food smells too good to ignore. One plate of jollof, extra spicy, please." Efeoma served him quietly, her eyes lowered. She wasn't in the mood for small talk. But the man returned the next day, and the day after that. Each time he cracked a gentle joke, sometimes about Lagos traffic, sometimes about how pepper should be classified as a weapon. His name was Emeka, a widowed banker who worked down the street. Unlike Kunle, he never boasted about his money or position. He never demanded respect. He earned it. One day, when the street was quiet, he looked at her and asked softly, "Forgive me if I'm being too forward, but are you married?" Efeoma's hands froze. For a moment, her past rushed back, Kunle's insults, the humiliation, the nights of crying. "I was," she said finally, her voice low, "but not anymore." Emeka nodded slowly. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring pain. I only asked because you carry yourself like someone who has suffered, but still stands strong. I admire that." For the first time in years, Efeoma felt seen, not as a failure, not as a burden, but as a woman. It didn't happen overnight. Months passed. Emeka kept coming, sometimes buying foods, sometimes bringing supplies, bags of rice, bottles of oil, even crates of soft drinks. Slowly, Efeoma opened her heart. She told him about her love for cooking, her dreams of one day owning a proper restaurant. He listened with patience, never interrupting, never judging. One evening, he told her his own story, how his wife had died in a car crash, how he had sworn never to love again. "But then I met you," he said gently. "You remind me what peace looks like." Efeoma's eyes filled with tears. She was scared, but something deep inside whispered that this man was different. Months later, under the quiet canopy of a mango tree in Chioma's compound, Emeka asked her to marry him. No crowd, no photographers, no noise, just sincerity. And for the first time since her life shattered, Efeoma said yes. Their marriage was small, just close friends, Shioma dancing like she had won the lottery, and a pastor praying blessings over their union. Life with Emika was nothing like life with Kunle. He encouraged her to grow her business. He built her a small shop in Surulere, where customers could sit and eat instead of rushing away. And then, months later, something happened. Efeoma began feeling weak. Food smells made her sick. She brushed it off as malaria until Emika insisted on a hospital visit. When the doctor returned with her results, he was smiling. "Congratulations, madam," he said. "You're pregnant." Efeoma froze. The tears came before she could stop them. She fell into Emika's arms, sobbing with joy. But the biggest surprise came during her first scan. The doctor looked at the monitor, then back at them. His eyes widened. "Madam, I'm hearing 2 heartbeats. Wait, 3. 3? Efeoma gasped. "Yes. You're carrying triplets." Her scream of joy echoed through the clinic. Emika knelt on the floor, laughing and crying at the same time. 3 children at once? God, you've overdone it. When the babies finally arrived months later, 3 healthy, beautiful boys, the news spread like wildfire. The woman Kunle had called barren was now a mother of triplets. And that was only the beginning of her return. The city of Lagos had seen many weddings, but none as grand as Kunle Banjo's second marriage. For weeks, the city buzzed with gossip. Billboards on Uzumba carried adverts of his logistics company alongside teasers of his wedding. Bloggers whispered about the guest list: governors, Nollywood stars, billionaires. Hashtags trended on Instagram. Hashtag Kunle and Adesawa 2025. Kunle had spared no expense. The venue was a massive event hall on Lekki's waterfront, draped in white roses and golden chandeliers. Outside, red carpets stretched as far as the eye could see. Cameramen swarmed like bees. Politicians stepped out of Bentleys. Socialites glittered in Asoebi lace so bright it shimmered under the Lagos sun. Inside, the hall pulsed with Afro beats from a live band flown in from Ghana. Guests laughed, sipped champagne, and whispered about how Kunle had finally moved on from his barren ex-wife. But Kunle's heart wasn't at peace. As he stood at the altar in his white agbada embroidered with gold, his eyes kept darting toward the entrance. He had insisted that the wedding planners send a first-class invitation to Efeoma. He wanted her in the front row, broken, watching his new bride sparkle in diamonds. He told himself it was closure, but deep down it was pride. He wanted to see her small. And then the moment came. A sleek black G-Wagon rolled to a stop outside the hall. The driver stepped out and opened the back door. First, a flash of yellow fabric shimmered in the sun. Then slowly, Efeoma stepped out. She was radiant in a flowing yellow gown, her head wrapped tight like a crown. Her steps measured, calm, regal. On each side of her, 2 little boys in matching white shirts and yellow shorts held her hands. A third boy, slightly smaller, skipped in front, clutching a tiny toy car. Gasps filled the air. Phones rose like a forest of cameras. "Is that Kunle's ex-wife?" someone whispered. "She has children?" "3?" another replied, jaw hanging. "Triplets. Jesu." The murmurs spread like wildfire. Inside, the music faltered. Guests turned. The pastor shifted uncomfortably. Kunle's chest tightened as his eyes locked on the sight. He stepped back, his legs suddenly weak. "No, this can't be," he muttered. But it was. With slow, graceful steps, Efeoma walked into the hall. The crowd parted for her as though she were royalty. Her sons clung to her hands, their curious eyes scanning the glittering hall. She didn't rush, didn't falter. She simply walked straight to the front row, the very seat Kunle had reserved for her humiliation. She sat. Calm. Powerful. Her children climbed onto her lap, whispering, "Mommy, we made it." She kissed their heads gently, her face glowing with peace. And the entire hall went silent. At that exact moment, Adesawa, Kunle's flashy new bride, entered in her shimmering white gown. Her veil sparkled with diamonds, her bridesmaids dancing behind her. She was ready for her moment of glory.
But something was wrong.
The hall was too quiet. Instead of eyes on her, cameras were pointed toward the front row at Efeoma and her 3 boys. Confused, Adesua reached the altar and whispered sharply to Kunle, "What's going on?" He couldn't answer. His eyes were glued to the triplets, his throat dry, his face pale. "Kunle," Adesua hissed louder. "Who are those children with your ex-wife?" He stammered. I don't know." The pastor cleared his throat nervously. "Shall we begin?" But Adesua turned fully toward Kunle, her voice trembling but firm. "You told me she was barren. You told me she couldn't give you children." Gasps rippled through the crowd. All eyes were now fixed on the couple at the altar. Efeoma rose slowly, carrying the smallest boy in her arms. Her voice was clear, steady. "These are my sons. You called me barren, Kunle. You threw me out, humiliated me, told the world I was a curse. But I was never the problem. God has proved it with 3. The hall erupted. Some guests clapped in disbelief, others covered their mouths, while bloggers furiously typed updates for Twitter and Instagram. Kunle's knees buckled. I didn't know." Adesua's face turned cold. "Didn't know? You lied to me. You dragged her name through the mud, and all along it was you?" Whispers spread like wildfire. So Kunle was the one with the problem. Imagine he called her barren. God don't catch him. Adesua ripped off her veil. Her voice rose for the whole hall to hear. "I will not marry a liar. Not today, not ever." She dropped her bouquet on the altar and stormed out, her bridesmaids rushing after her. Cameras flashed. Phones recorded every second. Kunle tried to follow, but his legs gave way. He stood frozen in shame as murmurs thundered around him. Kunle the disgrace. Kunle the barren one. Meanwhile, Efeoma adjusted her gown, kissed her sons' foreheads, and turned to leave. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't gloat. She simply walked with dignity, her children by her side. At the entrance, Chioma whispered, "Efi, should we go now?" "Yes," Efeoma said calmly. "We've been seen. That's enough." They stepped back into the G-Wagon as cameras flashed wildly. Social media exploded, #Kunle exposed, #triplets, in Lagos, #God of Efeoma. Back inside the hall, Kunle collapsed onto a chair. The once proud king of Lekki sat alone, his agbada heavy, his crown of pride shattered. The band stopped playing. The hall that once roared with laughter now echoed with whispers of his downfall. And in that silence, Kunle felt it for the first time, the full weight of his disgrace. By the next morning, Lagos was buzzing. Clips from Kunle's wedding had gone viral. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere the same headline screamed. Ex-wife storms wedding with triplets. Kunle Banjo exposed at Lekki wedding. The barren woman was never barren. Hashtags trended across Nigeria. Kunle exposed, #triplets of grace, #God of Efeoma. Memes flooded WhatsApp groups. Kunle's stunned face was edited onto Nollywood posters. People joked about him in traffic, and comedians already promised skits by the weekend. For a man who lived on pride and public image, it was a death sentence. Kunle sat in his Lekki mansion, curtains drawn, phone buzzing endlessly. Calls from business partners, journalists, even his own family. But he couldn't answer any of them. His company group chat was full of gossip. Investors had started pulling out. A Dubai-based partner announced they were suspending talks. Bloggers accused him of deceit. Even his own mother, Mama Banjo, stormed into the mansion with fire in her eyes. "Kunle, look at the disgrace you have brought on this family," she shouted, slapping her wrapper in anger. "That woman carried triplets. Triplets! And you threw her out like trash? See how God has shamed you in public?" Kunle buried his face in his hands. "Mama, I didn't know. I thought it was her fault." His mother hissed. "Thought? You didn't even check yourself. 7 years of blaming her, and you never tested your own body? Foolish pride." She walked out, shaking her head, leaving him with his silence. Later that week, Kunle finally dragged himself to a private clinic in Ikoyi. The doctor's words pierced his soul. "Mr. Banjo, your test results confirm low sperm count and motility, likely from an untreated infection years ago. With treatment, there may be improvement, but naturally conceiving would be difficult. Kunle stared blankly at the floor. 7 years of cruelty, 7 years of calling Efeoma barren, 7 years of lies, and it had always been him.
In Surulere, life looked very different.
Efeoma's food business, once just a roadside stall, had now expanded into a proper restaurant. Thanks to Amika's support, she opened a neat space painted in warm orange and cream, with wooden chairs and the smell of smoky jollof wafting into the street. Customers filled the place daily, bankers, students, even celebrities who had seen her trending online. "Ah, this Madame Jollof, we disgrace Kunle," people whispered with admiration. "See how God they lift person."
But Efeoma didn't do it for attention. She did it for peace.
At home, her triplets filled her days with laughter and chaos. They toddled around the living room, scattering toys and shouting, "Mommy! Mommy!" Amika adored them, playing airplane with them on his shoulders, feeding them when Efeoma was tired, rocking them to sleep at night. Every morning before leaving for work, he kissed her forehead and said, "Thank you for making this house a home."
For the first time in her life, Efeoma knew what love without conditions felt like.
One quiet evening, as Efeoma rocked one of the boys to sleep, there was a knock on the door. Gioma opened it and froze.
Standing there, shoulders slumped, eyes red, was Kunle. Efeoma's breath caught.
He stepped inside slowly, cap in hand like a schoolboy. The man who once roared like a lion now looked like a wounded dog.
"Efeoma." His voice cracked. "I didn't come to cause trouble. I just needed to say something." She stood tall, her face calm. "Speak."
Kunle's eyes filled with tears. "I ruined everything. I judged you wrongly. I insulted you. I let my pride destroy the only good thing in my life. I found out the truth. I'm the one with the problem. Not you. Never you." He dropped to his knees. "I'm sorry. Even if you don't forgive me, I needed to say it. You were loyal. You were good. And I destroyed you." For a long moment the room was silent. Only the soft cooing of the baby in her arms broke the tension. Finally, Efeoma spoke. Her voice was steady, not harsh. "You didn't just hurt me, Kunle. You crushed me. You made me feel worthless. But I am no longer broken. I have peace now." He nodded, tears streaming. "I know, and you deserve it. More than anyone. I needed to hear your forgiveness." She looked at him for a long time, then said softly, "I forgive you. Not for you, but for me. I let go a long time ago."
Kunle bowed his head. "Thank you."
He stood slowly, turned, and walked out into the Lagos night, carrying nothing but regret.
Meanwhile, the internet still burned with chatter.
Bloggers posted side-by-side pictures, Efeoma glowing in yellow with her triplets, and Kunle sitting defeated at the altar. Memes compared her G-Wagon entrance to a Nollywood climax.
Comments poured in. "God is not mocked. See how he vindicated her."
Kunle is the poster child for pride. Lesson for men everywhere.
If you have a good woman, cherish her.
While Kunle trended for disgrace, Efeoma trended for dignity. She received invitations to speak at women's events. Pastors used her story in sermons, and her restaurant's customers tripled overnight. Yet, she remained humble. When Gioma teased her, "Madam Celebrity, you've gone viral," Efeoma simply smiled. "I didn't ask for fame. I only asked for peace."
Weeks turned into months.
Kunle's empire crumbled. Partners withdrew. Staff resigned. Creditors came knocking. His mansion in Lekki grew quiet, halls echoing with emptiness. The man who once commanded respect now avoided public places. Even his bodyguards abandoned him. In contrast, Efeoma's home was filled with warmth. Amika and the triplets gave her a joy that money could not buy. Her restaurant expanded to a second branch in Yaba. She walked through the streets with her head high, greeted with smiles and admiration. One evening, as she and Emika sat on their balcony, watching the boys chase each other with toy cars, Emika said softly, "Do you realize, Efe, that your greatest pain became your greatest testimony?" She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "Yes. And it taught me that when men call you finished, God is only beginning." One afternoon, a courier delivered a letter to her restaurant. The handwriting was shaky, the signature familiar. Kunle Banjo.
It read,
Thank you for your strength. Thank you for your forgiveness. I lost a good woman because of my pride. I hope your sons grow up knowing how proud they should be of you. May you never lack peace. Kunle. Efeoma folded the letter gently and tucked it away. She wasn't angry. She wasn't bitter. She was simply at peace. That night, as she tucked her triplets into bed, one of them asked sleepily, Mommy, why does everyone know our story? She smiled. Because our story is a reminder that no matter how people try to shame you, God's truth will always shine through. The little boy yawned and curled into her arms. I love you, Mommy. She kissed his forehead. I love you too. And in that moment, surrounded by love, laughter, and peace, Efeoma knew her past had no power over her anymore. In the end, the story of Kunle and Efeoma was no longer just about marriage or pride or betrayal. It became a story about justice, dignity, and the power of God to restore. Kunle, the man who once walked through Lagos with his head high, now lived in the shadows of his own pride. His mansion was quiet, his business was collapsing, his name was dragged across social media as a warning. Like the book of Proverbs 16 verse 18 says, Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall.
And fall Kunle did.
But Efeoma, once mocked, once broken, once called barren, was lifted up by the same God she had cried to in her darkest nights. She had whispered under the Lagos streetlights, My God will fight for me. And indeed, like Exodus 14 verse 14 promises, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Her stillness, her faith, her refusal to let bitterness consume her became her victory. Life in Lagos moves fast. Money rises and falls. Friends change. Power shifts. But one truth never changes. Character is greater than wealth. Kunle had all the riches the city could offer. Cars, contracts, influence. But because he lacked humility, he lost everything. Efeoma, on the other hand, left his mansion with nothing but a small bag and tears in her eyes. Yet through patience, faith, and resilience she gained far more than gold. Her new life with Amika, her 3 children, her thriving restaurant, these were not just rewards. They were proof that God restores the years that the locusts have eaten. Joel 2 verse 25. Her story reminds us of Psalm 113 verses 7-9. He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. He seats them with princes and has them inherit a throne of honor. He settles a childless woman in her home as a happy mother of children. Praise the Lord. Perhaps the most powerful part of Efeoma's journey was not her triplets or her business or even her new marriage. It was her ability to look Kunle in the eye and say, I forgive you. That forgiveness set her free. It was her final act of victory. Because unforgiveness chains you to your past, but forgiveness releases you into your future. As Colossians 3 verse 13 teaches, bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you.
And that is what Efeoma did.
Viewers, this story may sound like fiction, but the lessons are as real as the streets of Lagos. Maybe you've been mocked like Efeoma. Maybe you've been betrayed by someone you trusted. Maybe you've been carrying shame for something that wasn't even your fault. Hear this today. You are not what people call you. You are who God says you are. And like Isaiah 61 verse 7 declares, instead of your shame you will receive a double portion, and instead of disgrace you will rejoice in your inheritance. And so you will inherit a double portion in your land, and everlasting joy will be yours. If God could turn Efeoma's tears into triplets, he can turn your mourning into dancing. Kunle ended as a cautionary tale, a man destroyed by pride. Efeoma ended as a testimony, a woman lifted by grace. Which path will you choose? Will you live like Kunle, holding on to pride until it breaks you? Or will you walk like Efeoma, trusting God even in your darkest nights, knowing that he is faithful to restore? In one corner of Lagos, Kunle sits alone in his mansion, staring at empty walls, asking himself, what did my pride gain me? In another corner, Efeoma sits with her triplets, laughter echoing, her husband's arm around her, peace filling her home. That is the difference between a life built on pride and a life built on faith. And now, my dear viewers, I ask you, do you think Efeoma did the right thing by forgiving Kunle even after all the pain he caused her? Or should she have turned him away without a word? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from you. And if this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Hit the like button, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to this channel for more powerful Lagos stories filled with lessons, suspense, and hope. Because remember, stories may end, but the lessons live on. As the Bible says in Romans 8, verse 28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Efeoma's story is proof. Your story can be proof too. Until next time, stay strong, stay humble, and never forget, what people meant for evil, God can turn into good. Thanks for watching this story all the way to the end. You're amazing for staying with us. If you enjoyed this video, don't stop here. We've got plenty more stories just like this one waiting for you. Simply click on one of the videos popping up on your screen right now and keep the journey going. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next upload. Until next time, stay inspired, stay curious, and keep the stories alive.